a sound or you'll wake them in the deepest part of the ancient forest. The flickering candlelight illuminates the faded pages of a story. Hedgehog still sits and tells the stories that people dare not tell before.
The Weaver of Fates and the Broken Loom. In the forgotten, mist-shrouded duchy of Veridia, nestled between the jagged peaks of the Dragon's Tooth Mountains and the silent, black waters of the Lacrimere Lake, time did not flow so much as it pulled and stagnated. The sun was a pale, reluctant coin in a perpetual sky of grey wool, and the rain was a fine, constant drizzle that tasted of iron and old sorrows. The people of Veridia were a somber lot, their faces etched with a resignation passed down through generations. Their lives were not their own to shape. They were threads in a grand, cosmic tapestry, woven by a being known only as the Weaver. The Weaver resided in a spire of black obsidian that thrust from the heart of the ducal castle like a shard of night frozen in time. No one alive had seen her. She was a myth, a dread, a fundamental law of nature. It was said that upon a great loom of fate, she wove the destiny of every soul born in Veridia. The length of their thread determined their lifespan, the color, their joy or sorrow, the pattern, their triumphs and failures. To question the weave was blasphemy. To resist it was madness. The ruling duke, Oren, was a man shackled by this very belief. His thread, he knew, was woven to be short. A wasting cough had nestled in his chest since boyhood, a constant reminder of his predetermined end. His wife, the Duchess Elara, had died years prior in childbirth, her thread cut abruptly, a tragic but preordained snip of the shears. All that kept Oren from succumbing to despair was his daughter, Elara. She was 17, with her mother's fiery hair and a spirit that seemed to defy the very greyness of Veridia. She asked questions, dangerous questions. "Why must we accept it, father?" she would press, standing by the leaded glass windows of the great hall, watching the listless citizens below. "Why does the blacksmith's son drown in the lake? Why does the baker's wife die of a fever? If it is all woven, then what is the point of hope? What is the point of love?" Oren would cough into a silk handkerchief, staining it with flecks of blood. "The weaver's design is beyond our understanding, my child. To struggle is to suffer more. Our only virtue is acceptance." But Elara could not accept. She had seen the light in her mother's eyes extinguished, seen the vitality drained from her father. She felt a restless, rebellious energy inside her, a conviction that the tapestry could be torn, the threads reknotted. Her rebellion found its focus in a young stable hand named Kael. He was an orphan, his thread presumed to be one of hardship and obscurity. But he had eyes the color of the summer sky that Elara had only seen in paintings, and a laugh that echoes in the stone courtyards, a sound so alien it felt like a miracle. They met in secret, in the hayloft above the ducal stables, surrounded by the scent of horse and old wood. He spoke of dreams, of seeing the ocean, of a world beyond the mountains where the sun shone brightly, and fates were not woven but forged. "Come with me, Elara," he whispered one night, his hand warm around hers. "We can leave this place. We can find a land without a weaver." It was a beautiful, impossible fantasy. And it was shattered the day the royal astrologer and weaver's interpreter, a gaunt, severe man named Malachi, announced his divination. Reading the patterns in the star charts and the entrails of birds, he declared that a great calamity was upon Veridia. The tapestry was fraying. The only way to restore balance was a supreme sacrifice, a life of noble blood, offered willingly to the weaver, to strengthen the weave. And the stars, he said, pointed unequivocally to Elara. The castle plunged into mourning deeper than any winter. Duke Oren locked himself in his chambers, his cough worsening into a continuous, ragged sound. The people, terrified of the prophesied calamity, began to look at Elara not as their future duchess, but as a necessary offering. Their fear quickly curdled into a grim demand. Elara was horrified. This was not acceptance. This was monstrous. It was one thing to believe in a predetermined fate, it was another to be ritually murdered for it. Kael, desperate, planned their escape. They would take 2 horses and flee through the whispering woods, hoping to find a pass through the mountains. The night of their flight was moonless, the drizzle having thickened into a cold, relentless rain. They almost made it to the tree line. But Malachi, who saw all patterns, had foreseen this deviation. The Duke's guards, their faces hard with a fanatical belief in the weaver's wool, intercepted them. Kael fought with the fierce, untamed strength of love, but he was no match for armored men. He was struck down, a sword plunging into his side, his blood a dark stain on the wet earth. As he lay dying in Elara's arms, his summer sky eyes clouded with pain, he whispered, "The loom, it's a lie, Elara. Break it." He was gone. His thread, whatever its intended length, had been cut not by a divine weaver, but by a mortal blade wielded by mortal fear. Something inside Elara shattered, and in its place, a cold, diamond-hard resolve formed. Grief was a luxury she could not afford. Rage was a fire she would use. They dragged her back to the castle, now a prisoner in her own home, awaiting the day of the sacrifice. But Elara was no longer a girl waiting for her fate. She was a weapon being sharpened. Kael's final words were her compass. Break it. The night before the sacrifice, she feigned a catatonic despair. When the physician came with a sedative draught, she spilled it into the rushes when he wasn't looking. When the guards changed shift, she used a hairpin to pick the old, simple lock on her chamber door, a skill Kael had teasingly taught her during a lazy afternoon. She slipped into the shadow-haunted corridors, a ghost in her own home. She did not head for the gates. She moved deeper into the castle, towards the black obsidian spire. If the weaver was there, then the loom was there, and she would look upon the face of the god who had ordained Kael's death and her own. The way was not guarded. Why guard a path no sane person would ever take? The entrance to the spire was a single, arched door of age-blackened oak, without handle or keyhole. It was sealed by belief alone. But Elara's belief was gone, burned away by grief. She placed her hands on the cold wood and pushed. With a groan that seemed to come from the foundations of the world, the door swung inward. A spiral staircase, carved from the same black obsidian, wound up into darkness. She climbed. The air grew colder, thinner, and filled with a sound. A low, rhythmic click-clack, swish that vibrated in her teeth. It was the sound of a loom. At the top, she emerged into a circular chamber. And there, she beheld the heart of the tyranny that had ruled her life. The Loom of Fate was vast, occupying the center of the room. It was not made of wood, but of a substance that seemed to be solidified moonlight and shadow. Countless threads stretched across its frame, glowing with a soft, internal light, silver for joy, gray for sorrow, black for death. They pulsed with the lives they represented. She could see, with a nauseating clarity, a bright silver thread snuff out into blackness somewhere in the city below. She saw a tangled knot of gray that she somehow knew was her father, trapped in his illness and grief. And before the loom, her back to Elara, sat the weaver. She was not a crone, nor a goddess. She was an ancient, desiccated figure, draped in robes woven from the same threads of fate. Her hands, skeletal and swift, moved with an automated, relentless precision, shifting the shuttle, beating the weft. Her long, white hair was thin and lifeless. "You are early, sacrifice," the weaver said, her voice the dry rustle of dead leaves, yet without malice. It was a statement of fact, empty of emotion. "Your thread is not yet meant to be cut. The pattern demands it at dawn." Elara stepped forward, her heart a thunderous drum in the silent, rhythmic chamber. "Why?" she demanded, her voice trembling not with fear, but with fury. "Why him? Why any of us?" The weaver paused her work, though the loom itself seemed to hum with impatient energy. She did not turn. "Why? There is no why. There is only the pattern. The tapestry must be whole. It must be beautiful. Individual threads are insignificant." He was not insignificant. Elara screamed, the sound roar in the quiet room. He was loved. He had dreams. "Dreams are the loose ends I trim," the weaver replied calmly. "Love is a color that often disrupts the harmony. Your love for him was an anomaly. A flaw. It threatened to unravel entire sections of the weave. His death, and your sacrifice, will correct the imbalance. It will restore order." Elara stared at the back of this creature, this prisoner of her own creation. And in that moment, she understood. The weaver was not a conscious, malicious god. She was a machine, a system, an algorithm of cold, brutal balance. She wove not for joy, not for meaning, but for the sake of the weave itself. The beauty of the tapestry was a lie. It was a monument to emptiness. Kael was right. It was all a lie. Her eyes fell upon the shears resting on the loom, the shears of Atropos, gleaming and sharp. They were meant for her thread. "You speak of order," Elara said, her voice now dangerously quiet. "But you have created a world of despair. You speak of beauty, but you have woven a masterpiece of suffering." She walked around the loom, forcing herself to look upon the weaver's face. It was a shock. The face was not evil, but empty. The eyes were milky orbs, seeing not the world, but only the threads. The skin was stretched tight over bone, devoid of life. "The pattern is all," the weaver intoned, her blind eyes seeming to look through Elara. "No," Elara said. She reached out, not for the shears, but for a single thread on the loom. It was a vibrant, rebellious gold, tangled and straining against the gray pattern around it. She knew, with a certainty that shook her soul, that it was her own. The people are all. Their lives. Their choices. Their love. Even their pain is more real than this dead thing you have made. With a cry that was part sorrow, part liberation, she grabbed her thread and pulled. It did not snap. It resisted with a force that felt like the weight of the world. The entire loom shuddered. The weaver let out a sharp, inhuman sound, not of anger, but of system failure. You cannot. You will unravel everything. Let it unravel. Elara roared, pulling with all her strength, her muscles screaming, her vision blurring. Let it all burn. Better a world of chaos and free will than a prison of perfect order. She felt a terrible tearing, not in the loom, but in the very fabric of reality around her. The chamber wavered. The rhythmic click-clack stuttered and died. With a final, monumental heave, Elara ripped her thread clean from the warp and weft of the Loom of Fate. The sound was that of a universe screaming. A shockwave of silent energy exploded from the loom. The weaver shrieked, a dry, cracking sound, as the threads around her began to whip and flail, losing their structure. The tapestry, the great, grand design, was coming apart. Threads of silver, gold, grey, and black snapped and recoiled, their light winking out. Elara fell to her knees, clutching the severed, still glowing golden thread in her hand. It was warm, alive. It was hers. The weaver was crumbling, her form dissolving into dust, her robes reverting to a cloud of disconnected, colorless threads. What have you done? She whispered, her voice fading. There is no pattern, there is nothing. There is everything, Elara whispered back. The obsidian spire trembled. Cracks appeared in the walls. The Loom of Fate, the engine of determinism, splintered and collapsed into a heap of inert, non-luminous material. Down in the castle, Duke Oren felt a sudden, shocking clarity in his lungs. He drew a deep, clean breath, the first in 20 years. His coughing had stopped. The physician, summoned in disbelief, could find no trace of the disease. In the city, a mother watched in awe as the fever that had gripped her child broke in an instant. A farmer, whose land had been barren for seasons, saw the first green shoots push through the iron-hard soil. The perpetual grey sky began to tear, and a single, brilliant beam of sunlight pierced through, striking the highest tower of the castle. The age of the weaver was over. Elara stumbled from the crumbling spire, the golden thread still coiled in her fist. She found her father in the great hall, standing on his own 2 feet, his face bathed in the unfamiliar sunlight, tears streaming down his face. Elara. What has happened? We are free, father, she said, her voice hoarse but steady. We are finally free. It was not a clean freedom. The unraveling of the tapestry had its price. Some, whose entire identity was built on preordained suffering, were lost without it. Others, freed from the constraints of their threads, made terrible, violent choices. But for the first time, they were their choices. There was also kindness, courage, and love that bloomed in unexpected places, no longer dictated by a color in a weave. Elara never became duchess. She gave the title to a council of the people. She took the golden thread, the symbol of her stolen and reclaimed future, and left Veridia. She walked into the world, into the chaos and the beauty of a life unwoven. She was no longer a thread in a tapestry, but the weaver of her own, small, magnificent story. And somewhere, in the dappled sunlight of a forest no map had ever recorded, she thought she felt a presence, a memory of summer sky eyes, walking beside her. Not a thread of fate, but a choice remembered. A love that had, against all odds, broken the world and made it new.
If you feel a chill down your spine, don't worry. They're just standing behind you, listening with you. Thank you for daring to enter the world of fairy tales of Nim. We'll see you again next night, if you're still around.